Now, Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
We are speaking with the Devildriver's Mike Spreitzer. The new album, Dealing with the Demons, comes out October 2nd. And as we say here in Montreal, bonjour, Michael. How are you? Or Mike?
Good. How you doing?
Good. I'm doing good. I'm surviving the COVID. So I just want to get straight into this album here. It is a project that was birthed probably 2 years ago or 3 years ago. You've been working on it. You wrote upwards of 50 songs. And now we're finally getting this part one of two albums coming out. Talk to me about this concept and going in saying, hey, did you write 50 songs sort of accidentally and they just sort of all came out and thus part one and part two? Or did you say, all right, let's just go write as many songs as possible? And how did the approach come about?
I don't think we actually hit 50, but me and Neil wrote right on our own, as well as Austin wrote a few songs for these records. And, you know, Neil has the ability to record himself. I have the ability to record myself. Hold on 1 second. Sorry. And then we'll just get together. I'm not having a really good time back here.
Hey, join the club. But yeah, you know what? That's the beauty of these online things. We get everybody sort of new and natural, and it's a whole new world, new approach to doing interviews. But go ahead.
My internet at my house went out, so I rushed over to my dad's office, and that's where I am right now. So I'm not even at home. But
so your dad's got the cool skeletons in the back.
Yeah, this is Ahmed the terrorist. I think my nephew gave this to him because he just loves Ahmed.
That's funny. That is funny. I'm probably gonna have to put a copyright notice on the video.
Yeah, I wonder if. Oh my God! It just said what happens on the tour bus stays on the tour bus. I couldn't agree more.
Well, yeah, it should. It should. But listen. Ultimately, you wrote a lot of songs for this. You didn't just go in and say, "We've got 10 songs, we're done."
No, Neil and I, we produce a bunch of demos, so to speak. We pass them off to each other, mainly me, Austin, and Neil. Decide which ones we're going to work on. And it's not like, okay, we're going to work on these, it's just like, okay, the guys will come over to my house and what are we going to work on today? And if we worked on my song the day before, we're going to work on one of Neil's or Austin's, and we'll just kind of keep on going and we'll pick one out of the bunch, work on it until we like it. And then once we get a bulk of material done, we'll, start sending them to Dez.
Does this come off then more as a concept album where everything sort of leads to each other, or is it just a plethora of material and therefore volume 1 and volume 2, or is it a story that you must really listen to in its entirety?
You know what, that aspect of the whole thing you would have to ask Dez regarding vocals, because I'm not around during the vocal process. And also the vocals were done, God, I want to say like 6 months after the music was done because of scheduling, touring, and, other things that we had to do. But I don't think it's a story from beginning to end. It's not like Antichrist Superstar where he's, telling a whole story. There's just a broad concept behind, dealing with your demons and basically purging them.
Let me ask you about the concept of how you put the album together. I was talking to Michael Schenker the other day, and he's like, well, I go in and I record all my guitar parts because I know what's in my head and I know I want to get them down, and then the drummer will come in and then the bass player will come in and they got to fit themselves to my parts. And I find that interesting because I've always felt, well, you do the drums and stuff first. How do you approach the song building of, do you do your guitar parts first? Does Dez do the vocal first? How does it start?
Drums, guitars, bass, and vocals. We've always done it that way. with the exception of the Outlaws record, we did guitars and bass first, and then Austin came in and did drums on top of that. And that was I don't know why we did it that way. I think it was a scheduling thing. Like we only had a certain amount of time, and our producer Steve, who was recording the drums, probably had a scheduling conflict, and we wanted to get a head start on it. So Neil and I just did all the guitars and bass in my studio, and I did all the engineering for that. And then we just passed everything on to Steve, and then did the drums, and then he went over to Dez's house and did the vocals. But other than that, every other record is started with the drums.
Yeah, that's why when I'm listening to Schenker say about, well, I do all the guitars first, I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of interesting. Now, you do have a co-engineering or an engineering credit on this. You also have a co-producing credit on this album, don't you?
That's a mistake.
That's what I thought, because I was like, okay.
I did not have anything to do with producing this Devildriver record. I did co-engineer the Outlaws record, and sometimes I'm always credited as like additional engineering, because usually a lot of stuff that we do in the demo process at my studio we'll just export and throw onto the songs because we like the tone, or we like what we had already. But not the case on Dealing with Demons. I don't know how that happened, but I did not co-produce it, nor do I ever want to produce a Devildriver record. I like having a third party. I'm too close to the music to produce it myself.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, because I see bands that produce their own stuff, and I've always felt you need those extra ears in there, because otherwise you can't have that distance. Is that sort of how you feel in terms of producing, that you really need those third ears, that other pair of ears?
I like to, and I find I work better when I'm collaborating with people. When I have Neil and Austin around, I can be really indecisive of what I want to use. So if I have like 3 or 4 ideas for a particular song, or a riff, rather than sitting there and trying to figure out how I'm going to do it or what I'm going to choose, I'll just wait until Neil and Austin come over, and I'll throw it like, okay, what do you guys like better? And we'll put it to a vote, and that's done.
Right. So now let's look at the music industry. A report came out today that more than a third of the people in the industry are probably going to quit, walk away. What did you? Yeah, that was reported by The Guardian, that over a third, because you look at it and you say, okay, well, Devildriver, Kiss, whoever, they're not playing a show. Oh well, end of story. That's not the end of story. All the crews and all. How do you sort of see the industry moving forward? Do you think we're going to get back to arena and stadium shows soon? And what happens if the bus drivers go work at some, if they start working at Ford or at Apple, or they go work at Ralph's Supermarket and they're not there? How devastating has this been to the industry moving forward?
I think that remains to be seen. I do have a lot of concerns. There probably are a lot of bands that, let's say, well, first of all, I did hear stories of venues not giving out guarantees anymore to bands and just doing door deals. I can't see Devildriver going out and doing that. It's too risky. And you have the potential to lose a lot of money, because you're relying on promoters to promote shows in certain areas, and if they don't get the word out properly in their area, which has happened to us before, it can affect how many people come to the show. So there's that. There's probably, there's a lot of venues closing permanently. I don't know if they're going to get bought and reopen with new ownership, which I'm hoping is the case. I think the one thing that we have on our side as far as metal bands is concerned is metal is more like a religion to most metal fans than others, the way other people enjoy or how people look at other genres. It's just, I see a higher level of dedication.
True. Especially in Europe.
Yeah, everywhere. And I think that's going to help our genre, because they're going to be so hungry to get out and see their favorite bands, and I'm hoping that's going to help. But then there's going to be a lot of people that can't afford tickets.
Right.
And I don't think anything's going to even start to go back to normal until a vaccine is out. It's been out for 3 to 6 months. The distribution has been almost worldwide for the most part. And also, there's and I'm one of them. I'm not going to be one of the first people to get the vaccine. I know that they've rushed through this. I'm going to wait about 3 to 6 months to kind of see what happens.
Right. To see the secondary effects on the people that had it first.
Exactly. So I'm pro-vaccine. So even if it's out, and I'm pro-vaccine, and I'm still one of the people that's not going to take it right away.
Right. Oh, I agree.
There's got to be a lot of people out there that are going to be like that. So, who knows? It's going to take probably years for the music industry to recover from this. Yeah, almost every industry in some ways.
Yeah, but the entertainment industry, I'll go as far as saying the entertainment industry, including professional sports, when you don't have an audience there and you don't have fans there, at some point, when venues shut, they're saying 8 out of 10 clubs are going to shut permanently. How do you book a tour? Or, how do you get routing when you go, well, tonight we're in Missouri and everything else between here and Missouri's closed, so tomorrow we're in Boston? It's like, I can't drive that, right? Touring is going to be is devastated.
Let's hope those venture capitalists out there start investing in the music industry.
Do you
clubs open? Whatnot.
Yeah. We need some of those. Do you think then that live streaming is something that is viable? You look at Trivium. They did a show. They had 12,500 tickets sold. It raised over $200,000. Which, listen, that's nothing to sneeze at. Do you think that is a model that can move forward in the next 5 or 10 years, or is that just the sort of stopgap measure until we get back to quote unquote normal?
I think it's temporary. I think as soon as things open up, people are going to opt for in-person shows at a venue. And I mean, as a person in a band, I don't want to do that. You need the audience there. Otherwise it's just kind of a fancy rehearsal.
Yeah. Really kind of is. Now, in terms of the guitar playing on this, what's the gear that you use for this album? And in terms of moving metal guitar, we don't use gear on the album? No, but
So just wait until you hear my answer, man. It's so much on this one, but go ahead.
All right, no, go. Let's hear the gear. Are we and are you using metal picks? I mean, what are we using to give that extra drive to it?
Well, this album, Steve Evans, our producer, insisted that Neil and I both learn all 20 songs. And he wanted Neil on one side and me on the other for the rhythms, which we've never done before. Usually in Devildriver, if you wrote the riff, you wrote the song, you played the rhythms, you played the solo, you basically played what you wrote. And in this case, Neil gets a lot more low end out of his, you could have the same rig setup, and if I pick up the guitar, it's going to have more high end when I'm, plucking the strings. It's going to have more low end with Neil. It's just the way we hold the guitar or whatever. It's pretty drastically different. And Steve thought that would mesh really well together if we were both playing rhythms. So, we learned all the songs. We did, 2 weeks of pre-production in a studio with Steve, just me, Austin, Neil, and Steve. And that's also something we've never done before. So every song has, a guitar, an overdrive pedal, an amp, and a different speaker cabinet configuration on the left side and on the right side. And every song, it was like, okay, Mike, it's your turn. Pick one of the, I think we probably had somewhere between 10 and 15 amplifiers in the studio. And I would pick one, and not that we necessarily had to. It was just kind of a fun way to do it. And I think it gives every song a more unique character to it. And, I played so many different amps on the record. I kind of lost track of, Neil and I actually have a master list. Neil kept track of what guitar, what pickups, what overdrive pedal. We had two Mesa Boogie cabinets with
Oh, wow.
different speakers in each cabinet, and they were both mic'd up with somewhere between 5 and 6 microphones per cabinet. I mean, we really went in deep on this record, more than we ever have before, as far as recording and getting tones.
How important then are the sonics on a record like this? Because ultimately it ends up on Spotify or Apple Music, and they just crush it. So how do you make it so that you don't have that crushed sound?
You get a good mastering engineer that is very familiar with the streaming formats these days, and because like Amazon, Spotify, Apple Music, I did a little research about this a while ago, and this is exactly why I absolutely refuse to master records anymore. I've done it a little bit in the past for some bands, but I don't do it anymore, because you really got to know, the guy that mastered our record, Alan, he sends us different formats, one for Apple Music, one for Spotify, one for vinyl, wave formats, MP3 formats. I mean, it's so all over the place, but he knows what he's doing. So he's going to master the record to make sure that once the streaming services get a hold of it, they're not going to do like you said and, compress the hell out of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because back in the day, you did the whatever 16-bit, whatever 44, and off you went for the CD. And now you got to have like essentially 5 versions of the album, basically.
We're even selling cassettes. It's like, I don't even know how you master an album for cassettes. This is something that is completely beyond me, that I never thought in a million years that I would have to look into. But since I'm not doing mastering anymore, I just you know what? I'm not dealing with this anymore. I'll produce, I'll engineer, and I'll mix, but mastering, someone else is doing that.
Yeah, you don't have to bother for cassette. It's just going to make a big hiss anyway. Talk to me a little bit about the promotion in this time and under these circumstances, because normally, you drop an album, you do your interviews, you go on the road, and that's really where the music meets the fan. It's on the road, it's at the shows. How do you do it now where you can't go out anywhere and you just sort of have to sit here and talk to people like me and go, okay, well, I hope you buy the is there something missing in the equation when you can't go tour?
That's the thing. That's exactly it, is you just can't go and tour. It's usually what Devildriver likes to do is, we have these two-year record cycles for the most part. It's, we release a record, we tour on it for 2 years, and then we start another one. But in this case, we can't do anything. But ideally, it's nice to go and get like a direct support slot with another band that's bigger than you are. Do a year of supporting, so you get another audience that you normally wouldn't get if you're headlining, and promote the record that way. Promote yourself, just basically open up people's eyes to the fact that you're out there and you have new music coming out. So, and then the second year we'll just go out and headline. But in this case, you're just taking that out of the equation and doing the best we can. We've got volume 2 all done and is ready to go, but we're planning on releasing it next year, but at this point, I don't know what's going to happen with it. I don't think it'd be a very good idea to release 2 records back to back that we can't go out on tour and support. So yeah, that might be the case where, we release this record, which is coming out October 2nd, and then just, kind of seeing what happens day by day.
Yeah, it's kind of strange, but who knows? Maybe things will change, and you can get out there and start promoting it. The fury of our maker's hand. See, I have to keep my notes available to me. That was the first album that you joined. Talk to me about that first album coming in. When Dez says, "Okay, join the band," does he say, bring me Mike and show me what Mike can do, or do you come in and he says, "Hey, this is my band. You're going to play guitar this way"? Was it a welcoming kind of thing, or how was it coming in for that first album?
Dez really, he kind of stepped back and let the other guys decide in the band. And the original lineup of Devildriver, the other 3 guys, John Miller, John Berkland, and Jeff Kendrick, I knew since I was 18 years old. We all went to college together. And we were friends, we we were both in local bands that played shows together all the time. I joined their band very briefly until that band broke up because, John. But, I went on a tour with them. I was just, it was just supposed to be temporary. When I was over in Europe, I found out that they were deciding they weren't going to stay with the original guitar player, Evan. So all of a sudden, temporary turned into maybe permanent. And when we got home, there was one other guy named Joe Schmidt that played in a band called Pressure 4-5 that did fairly well for a little while. And to this day, I've never asked the guys who voted for who. And, I had the ability to record. And also, Joe had just gotten married. He just bought a house. His wife wanted to have kids and start a family. So I don't know what happened, but one way or another, I got the job. And Des just stood back and he's like, you know what, you got to write with these guys. I don't play an instrument. I'm not a good judge of who to hire in that department. So he just left it up to the other guys. And, it's like joining a club. You got to work your way up. So I kind of stood back and, I only wrote I think 2 or 3 songs on that record. It was Hold Back the Day, Pale Horse Apocalypse, and I might have written one other one, or bits and pieces of other ones. But I got really lucky because when the album was done, we gave it to Monty Connor over at Roadrunner, and he really wanted, John Berkland really wanted End of the Line to be the first track that we released. But for some reason, Monty wanted to release Hold Back the Day first. And I wrote most of that song on my own. So I got in the band, and luckily Monty just really liked that song, and it became the first single. So I kind of, it gave me a little boost. And as the records went on, I treaded lightly and was walking on eggshells with the other guys, trying not to be too pushy.
Right.
And as the records progressed, the more and more I started writing for the band.
Right. Well, okay, so not to be pushy, but what is something that you would like to see the band do that you haven't done yet? I mean, you must have thought of something along the way, going, yeah, we should do an album like this. We should, yeah, right?
I'm a big industrial goth fan, and so is Dez. Well, Dez is more into goth. He's not so much into industrial, but I love industrial music. It is hands down my favorite genre. And there's not that many good industrial bands out there. It's
not many left, at least.
No, and honestly, I could probably only name about 20 or 25 if I went down a list that I think are actually good industrial bands.
Right.
But, I think on the next time we write, I'm finally going to take that step and start incorporating that a little bit more, because we couldn't do that before because, we went through this phase in the beginning when Devildriver, in the baby days of Devildriver, where we really had to prove ourselves to the metal community, because new metal was a very dirty word at the time, around between 2002 and 2010, I would say. And Dez coming from Cold Chamber, a lot of people didn't want to like us just because Dez came from Cold Chamber. And he was really trying to distance himself from that, and we were all, on board with him. We didn't want to sound like Cold Chamber. We didn't want to dress like Cold Chamber, but I think we've gotten to the point now where, we're releasing a song called Wishing really soon that actually has Dez singing. It's got clean vocals on it. And that's something we would never have done 10 years ago, because it's no, it's not time to, fans are not ready for that yet. It's just, we might be shooting ourselves in the foot if we go that direction. But we've been a band for so long now that I kind of feel like, you know what, we can do whatever the hell we want, And the great thing is, we're a metal band. You get a lot of passes when you're in a metal band. We've given Metallica many, but they're still my all-time favorite.
They're not
band.
passing on Lulu. No, they're not.
No, they're not. And
but let me just quickly ask you about sound, because you look at a band like AC/DC, and AC/DC is AC/DC. They have the AC/DC sound, and that's what they do. And if they did anything different, you'd go, oh, whoa, what do you mean drum loops or whatever? And yet you look at other bands like U2 or Madonna and stuff, and their whole shtick is that every album is different. How much can you play with your sound and experiment before fans go, oh yeah, that's not the Devildriver I know? But at some point, don't they go, oh, it's always the same album? Like, so where's that fine line for you where you go, well, we can't do the same album 6 times, but we can't go do all this other stuff because, like, where do you sort of find that moment where you go, okay, this is what the fans will like and this is what they'll accept?
You know, it's kind of hard to say. But for me, if I was going to add industrial elements to Devildriver or goth elements to Devildriver, it would be very subtle. You know, it wouldn't sound like an industrial band. It would just have, you know, like, I mean, even Whitechapel has elements of, you know, electronics and stuff like that. And maybe not even industrial, just incorporating more electronics and different sounds just to kind of get away from the monotony of, you know, drums, bass, guitar, and vocals all the time, you know, just add some different flavors to your recipe.
Yeah, I'm fully down for that. And I'll finish with this. Since the album Dealing with Demons comes down into part 1 and a part 2, are they 2 sort of separate albums sonically and writing wise, just because you had all these songs, or are they really 2 of the same?
2 of the same. You know, I've told other people to kind of look at Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. You know, all those songs could be on one record, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some other people that feel differently, but that's the way I look at it anyway. You know, and we didn't write the songs with the mindset, okay, this is going to go on volume 1, this is going to go on volume 2. I mean, it was even up in the air that we were going to release 4 EPs for a minute. You know, it was something that we considered. But everything was written, said and done, and Neil came up with a track listing, sent it to me and the other guys, and we're like, cool. And I think the record label and Dez might have tweaked it a little bit, and there's still going to be 3 songs left over after these 2 albums are out, because there's 9 on volume 1, 8 on volume 2, and then we're going to release 3 more at some point. And
Japanese bonus tracks.
I don't know if they're going to be, you know, that's not even really so much a thing anymore.
Right.
But no, they'll either be released as singles or an EP, I think. That's my guess.
That sounds great. And hopefully we'll get you back.
Like, one of them in particular, I can't believe isn't on one of the records. Like, that one? Holy shit. Well, they're probably going to keep it for an EP or something like that. And I don't know if that was Dez's idea or the record labels, but yeah, I mean, there are 2 albums that are a part of one whole.
Great. Well, that's perfect. And of course, Dealing with Demons is out October 2nd. And Mike, as we say here in Montreal, merci beaucoup. Thank you. An absolute pleasure.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We'll talk soon. Cheers.
All right. See you, bud.
Bye-bye. Perfect.